Good afternoon. How are you today on this beautiful Monday afternoon at 12:30? And we're ready to go.
I'm really
Bank
good,
Holiday
thanks.
Monday.
Don't know what one of them is.
Well, Bank Holiday Monday. What Bank Holiday Monday? But it always reminds me about the fact that, you know, the only people that profit out of people buying houses is the bank.
Yeah.
And anybody out there, if you disagree with me, think about this reality. Because when you think about when your house goes up in value and it appreciates all the time because you live in it, when you go to buy the next house, it's proportionally the same value. So you're not really making anything out of it, are you? But you're continually paying a mortgage every single month to a bank who's actually making the money.
Yeah.
So is it knowing the bank's interest to get you to buy a house so they can sell you a mortgage? The alternative is rent. And I could genuinely, I could prove that renting is a more cost-effective solution to actually buying a property. But people just were indoctrinated into this mentality that we've got to buy a house, we've got to live in our own wee castle in our own place, and we've got to have ownership. But years ago in the 1950s, 60% of the stock was actually rented. It was local authority, it was the council housing, it was social housing, it was private landlords. It mainly had all the housing in the whole of Britain, much like Europe, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was just going to say that it is quite ingrained in people to own their own home, but more and more I see people turning to choose to rent rather than as an option, like they have to do that because they can't buy, they're choosing to rent. And we spoke about that before. It's quite a continental thing, but it's progressively becoming more common in this country.
Urban myths, and that's the urban myth I spoke about as well. The other one I wanted to add from last week was forced appreciation. If you hear this going round about now, because it seems to be coming up in the UK now about forced appreciation. Now, this is an American thing. Forced appreciation in this country does not really exist. The nearest you'll get to it is probably HMO, because as the value of the HMO rent goes up, the value of the HMO itself goes up, the house and multiple occupation. And that you could see that in St Andrews. Probably a classic example, because if you take a house that's not got an HMO license and compare it against a house that has got an HMO license, they're actually two comparably different values, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely. You can see that.
So forced appreciation is where the rents go up, and as a result, the yield with the rent going up, actually, when you put the yield and divide it by the rent level, it actually pushes the price of the value of the house up, because to an investor, forced appreciation is the fact it's an HMO property. It has that license for it, and it can get that value of return on that property, and that's what determines it. Commercial property used to be like that, but because of the fall in commercial values, and it's been such a volatile market because of internet now and everybody shopping online, commercial units aren't really looked at that to a certain degree. It is a wee bit, but not. It is another way of getting forced appreciation, I suppose. The reality is, because if you're getting £20,000 a year for a rent on a property, it's £100,000. That's not really the true value of the property to an investor. £100,000. That's a giveaway, because that's a 20% return. If you take that right down to 5%, that then if you compare it at a 5% return, the value of that property, I think, is probably around, what is it? Maybe around about 500,000. Can't remember. 500,000, 400,000, whatever. That should be the true value to get that 5% return. But on normal residential properties like what we do, Richard, buy-to-let stuff, forced appreciation isn't really a term. What people are doing, and they're trying to term it as forced appreciation, getting mixed up with the American version. They're trying to term it as forced appreciation, but what it really is all you're really doing is adding additional value that you can lock into the property for when you refurb it and then remortgage it. That's not forced appreciation.
Yeah, we had a discussion about this, Jim, in our private session on Thursday with our investors and things. And it's kind of worked into my notes for what we're going to talk about today as well. So
I just thought it was important to cover it, because when we covered it in the private session, and it's the very fact it's becoming more and more prevalent in the property training business.
I
think they just look up new words and they think to themselves, what could we indoctrinate?
That sounds good.
What could we call it differently in order to make up like smoke and mirrors, some other thing that we can sell a course to somebody. I kind of think it's like that. I mean, I'm no down on courses. I mean, there's some really good property trainers out there that really do add value to what you do. I'm loathed about the ones that come on just in the door 6 months, and it's almost like that, like they know everything. And I'm thinking, you have no idea. Probably a classic example is, I've made a profit. No, you've actually just increased the value of the property by 60 grand, but you've made nothing because you've no sold it. Okay, in the news this week, we're going to talk about the news because hey, you've done a really good script.
But as you know, Jim, I sit on the panel for the Landlords Forum with Fife Council, which is a selection of agents and self-managed landlords and things who all come together and speak to Fife Council, and we kind of bounce ideas off each other and what's going on. And one of the main topics which I brought up was empty homes in Fife. And there's currently, I knew there was around about 2,000. I think somebody in that confirmed there's 2,200 empty homes in Fife. And then I had a wee look online and looked at the Scottish Empty Homes Partnership. They've put out a document, Why Empty Homes Matter. And some interesting facts as well. There's long-term empty homes in Scotland are 43,766.
Wow.
And there's 27,854 empty homes that have been sitting longer than a year, which I think is crazy when we're in a predicament here where we've got a shortage in housing and homelessness is so high at the moment. And I think we've got all these empty houses. So
that's effectively 1 year's. That's 1 year's of housing for the government to hit their targets, 25,000 units. So we've got 27,854. No wonder there's a push to try and get these properties back into use. So, for anybody out there, if you do have a property which is empty just now and unoccupied, and you've had it a long-term empty, then feel free to contact us, because we'll show you new ways in order to get that back into use, potentially get that making money, or potentially get that to a position where you can sell it and actually realize that money and go and do something else with it. Enjoy yourself. There's no point in sitting, because it's not really adding value if you're just neglecting it. It's probably just staying stable, and it's getting progressively worse. Plus the fact that you're paying for utilities, you're paying for council tax, because you'll pay that regardless of it being empty. And then after 2 years, you'll pay for it even more. Or is it after 1 year now? You're paying 200% council tax.
It's 1 year.
So look at that as well. I mean, you've got after 1 year, you have 200% council tax. So that property is probably now costing you money every single month. Why not just realize the asset, actually make the money, go and do something else with it, and actually get it back into use for someone else. As I say, there's a whole generation of people for 1 year, which in Scotland, which could benefit from 27,000 homes being back into use and for people to use. It'd certainly help the market as with the undersupply just now, wouldn't it?
It definitely would. And I think if you're an investor in things as well, there's an empty homes list which you could go on and look. Now, I'm not entirely sure how that all works, but there is obviously ways and means of accessing the empty homes list. Obviously opens up that avenue for the properties that are there ready to be renovated and probably put back into use as a buy-to-let. And I think renovating an existing home obviously improves the housing shortage, and it's definitely an avenue I think that should be explored by everyone who's looking to do property investment and renovation and things. And I was reading in this document, Why Empty Homes Matter. They're quite obviously everything's kind of geared towards obviously carbon footprint and things as well, and actually fitting out an existing property rather than building a new one is actually more energy efficient, and it's obviously less effect on the environment and carbon footprint and things. So the government and things are quite they're quite pro to doing this. So I think it needs to be pushed a lot more, especially if they're trying to bring down our emissions and our carbon footprint and things.
Absolutely. We're going to be talking about the show for people watching. We're going to be talking about the KPIs, key performance indicators. These are the key information that you need to keep a track of every single time in terms of your property investments. If you're just starting out, this show's for you. If you're a long-term investor and you're a seasoned investor, this show's for you as well. You have a golden opportunity right now at this point in time to ask us any questions to do with property investment, how you get started, what do you do, how do you go about it, possibly even I'm a seasoned investor, I've got a big portfolio, my loan to value is maybe 20%. Should I be utilising some of that wealth and actually releasing it and then buying more property as well in order to leverage my position and actually make even more money, but more money for you and your family and the people around about you, and create even more jobs, more than likely, because you'll be buying more property, getting more refurbs, and actually providing more housing, which is really sought after at this point in time for people that they can't buy. Okay, let's get that right. Now, there's a lot of people out there. There's a few people out there that will say that's no fair. What about the people that are trying to buy their first home? What about the people that can't buy their first home at all and has no opportunity to do that because of their credit rating, or possibly they don't have a job at all and the social system can't accommodate for them because of their circumstances, because they have basically sold off all their council housing. There's been a reduction in council housing stock since the 1980s of 69%. Almost 70% of the housing stock has actually declined with the sell-off of council housing. So there is a huge for people for homes that need to rent, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely. And we push that issue in a lot of our shows, Jim, because it's such an important topic. The shortage of housing and the need for more housing to be built. But I think obviously looking at another avenue, the empty houses are definitely there to be regenerated and put back into use, and I think that's quite important.
Yeah. What about this about short-term licensing scheme?
I thought I would put it in there. Obviously, the short-term licensing scheme there's changes to that and being rolled out. Now it's quite similar to, obviously, I just want to stress that this is not to like typical residential letting like we do a private residential tenancy. This is more geared to people that do obviously holiday lets and things. But I thought it's quite interesting that you need to be aware of this, that they are making changes. It's similar to the HMO licensing process. There'll be different levels of the costing structure and things for that, depending on the criteria and the property and things as well. There won't be any initial inspections like they do with HMO licensing for this though. So, and there is guides and paperwork and things on the gov.scot website, which I downloaded and had a wee look through. So, if anybody
this is primarily for the serviced accommodation market.
Yes, but I thought it's quite interesting, and there's changes to that, so people need to be aware. I know that there's quite a lot of obviously short-term lets and things in Fife, especially along the Snook and areas. So people need to be aware of the changes.
Right across Scotland, really. I mean, everybody seems to be ploughing into serviced accommodation, or every man and their dog I can hear. Everybody's become a property sourcer all of a sudden. Everybody's, wanting to serviced accommodation. Everybody wants to flip and refurb properties. It's like every man and their dog's in this market now, and it's not the case. There is only 2 million landlords in the whole of Britain. Overall, there's 66 million people in Britain, so it's not really that much in comparison in terms of and there's not that much housing stock as well. But the key indicator here from housing market predictions, what I could possibly see, the things that could influence this, and the way the rental market's going and the housing market's going, is possibly in the inflationary aspect that's coming on the now. So what we're seeing now, and we spoke about progressively before, is we are seeing it people actually deciding to move in together.
Yeah, and we were talking about that last week as well.
And that's in the sales market, it's in the rental market, and potentially as well, you might see people cutting back on their holidays. So instead of maybe 2 or 3 holidays a year, I'd love to just get 1 holiday, to be honest. Maybe in case there's 2 or 3 holidays a year, they might just decide to have 1 holiday, which could affect the serviced accommodation market, which, there is a lot of properties going into that market just now. I'd be interested to hear what proportion that is in comparison now as to what it was 10 years ago, because I think it'll be significantly more. But the key here is, though, if that happens and the serviced accommodation market isn't used that much, then these people that have invested in these properties might then say, I tell you what, we're going to have to look at the mainstream residential renting market.
Yeah.
Now, for some of them, you've maybe leveraged their sale in a position that you can only make a return out of that property with actually doing holiday lets. And you can't go into the mainstream residential market because it's maybe comparatively too little money for you. That's what you've got to think about. So be careful to a degree, I would say. Make sure in the serviced accommodation market you've got your numbers right, and possibly you could flip over to the mainstream residential market if you really had to. That for me would be a perfect option in creating wealth for yourself, because then you're not forced to exit the market due to circumstances out of your control. You can accommodate for it and actually just transition over.
I have one situation like that happening at the moment. It's a short-term let that one of somebody that obviously that I've been speaking with. Now they have a very successful holiday let, but due to their personal circumstances, their family's grown. It's just there's a lot of turnaround, there's a lot of work goes into it. So he's decided to make the property a long-term residential instead of a holiday let. That's a different scenario.
I still don't get it. I still don't get it. The service accommodation market. To me, it just sounds like another job.
There's a lot of work in it.
It genuinely does. It's like these changeovers. It's like somebody's there for 3 days, they're there for a long weekend, and then you've got to have somebody come in and change over, or you do it yourself, and then you're replacing changing over every time. Now, when you think about it, 52 weeks in the year, if just 52 weeks in the year were filled and you had them, ideally you'd be able to afford to pay somebody to do it. But if you kept doing that yourself, it's like, geez, that is a full-time job. You're completely tied to that. Whereas what we do, or what I do, is like, I get somebody else to manage the whole thing and look after it, and I get no involvement at all. I just decide which property to buy, and then after that, the machine takes over and does everything from there. And literally, it's a hands-off passive investor now. So it's never based on my ability to perform. It's actually, the money comes in regardless, and that's what I love about what we do and what we teach as well. And we don't, I'll be honest with you guys out there, we don't teach anything else, because I know the keys to the money machine are in what I do over the last 30 years. It is a well-oiled machine. It works extremely well, and it works on, basically all your ducks in a row, and you know what to do next, what to do next, what to do next, what to do next. And I don't see anything. If you think you know anything better, it'll make more money over the medium to long term than property investment that I'm doing, then tell me and I'll do that as well.
Yeah. No, I totally like that.
I've talked about that. I've talked about it for the last 30 years. Not one person's actually said that. Not one person's come up and said, oh, it's so and so. And it's like, because you can't tell me there's anything different.
I think the prospect of what you can earn during peak seasons, especially in certain areas, I think that attracts people, and that's where the drive. But I think when you're out of peak season and you've still got all this turnover, and do you know what I mean, it is a lot of work, especially, and if you've got 1, 2, maybe 3 or more short-term lets, then you've got a lot of work on your hands. And then, like you say, obviously, they'll probably employ somebody to do that, but that will come at a cost. And it's funny, we talk about the cost of obviously having your portfolio for long-term residentials let by obviously a management company like ourselves, and we always refer to it as the price of a cup of coffee a day. I stopped at Starbucks the other day, and a price of a cup of coffee is a lot more. So you know what I mean? So it just goes to show.
Yeah, crazy. Hi, Julie. How are you? Any questions, please feel free to ask. So housing market predictions, that's where we are just now. Service accommodation just feels like a full-time job to me, as far as I'm aware. I don't understand why anybody would want to do it unless you've got scale, unless you can scale this up and have a huge amount of service accommodations. And that do it's the same with small buy-to-let as well. Unless you scale that up, it's almost like a job. It's another job. And maybe people want to do that, keep them busy, but to be honest, you've got a hobby to keep you busy. Don't treat property investment like a hobby, or you'll get a hobby income. If you treat it like a business, you will get a really good income out of this. And I mean an income for possibly an income for month to month, depending on what you want to invest in, how you want to invest it. We'll talk about the KPIs now and high yield cash flow properties, but also for the long-term retirement as well. The fact is, I don't know any that pay you in the long term as much as that. I mean, I've looked at my pension already, and I've looked at what that can give you, and I'm kind of thinking, and I've looked at Elaine's pension, it was with Diageo, and what she could get, and I'm like, I still don't get it. But we're convinced, and we're told time and time again that we should be investing our money heavily into pensions. But that's maybe just what the government wants. They just want stability. They just want you to be another brick in the wall.
Yeah.
I'm depressing you now, Richard.
No. Just make me think about things.
Hurry up and get in the property investment. You can buy it in my fund, actually. You can buy it in the fund.
Yeah, I think, like you're saying about building the portfolio, I mean, I know that we've done shows on like the accidental landlords, and you do get them. Obviously, people inherit houses and maybe want to then live in it in later years, and maybe just let it out in the meantime, and that's all they intend to do, and that's fine. But I think if people are in it to to make long-term income and build a portfolio, then yeah, you need to do it on scale and be prepared that it is a long-term gain.
Yeah. And on that note, let's look at some numbers.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. We were talking about KPIs, right?
Yep.
And let me show you what KPIs are. Okay, right. Okay, this is probably the easiest one to show. Can you see that okay?
Yeah, that's clear.
So my KPIs, let's talk about what I'm talking about here. I've got notes down here just to refer. Guys, if you've got a pen and paper, just take notes. Feel free to do that. So I'm going to go through this now. This is the typical spreadsheet that I'll use for my investment return. And I'll talk about the number of properties and the purchase properties, and we'll talk about that later on. Stamp duty, well, obviously you've always got 4% ADS on a second home. If you buy 6 or more properties, though, you're on an average amount. So let me talk about that. So an example of that is if you bought 6 properties at 60,000 each, so it came to 240,000. You would take 240,000. Can I do that on here?
Yeah, I think we done it last time on here, and then
let's do that.
You divide
so
it,
6
and then
properties. If we bought 6 properties or more, so just say 6, and they were all at 60,000, they would be at 240,000. Now, see that stamp duty, 14,400. But what the government now say is, if you've got more than 6 properties, it's that divided by the number. So instead of paying that, instead of paying 14,400, you would actually pay 2,400.
Yeah.
See that? That makes sense? So
yeah, it does.
because you're buying on scale, now you have to get them all over the line at the same time. So that's I mean, it's not is it a key performance indicator? It's something to be aware of. If you can buy 6 or more properties, it's worth actually as well if you've got 2 and somebody else has got 2 and somebody else has got 2, and you're thinking about all buying, maybe actually all buy together in one company, and actually depending if you can work together and have one investment vehicle that does that, thus saving yourself £12,000 in stamp duty.
Yeah.
So it's a good way to do that. I mean, even if you've got 6 and they're all costing 100,000, there you go. 4,000 versus 24. You're saving yourself £20,000 in stamp duty.
Yeah.
Now, why did the government put that in place? Well, that was designed for the big organisations. So the banks and that. They knew the banks would want to be in proper investment, so they decided anybody that has volume to buy more than 6 at any point in time, then they'll actually get that averaging system put on. Otherwise, you're on 4% stamp duty regardless.
Yeah.
Okay. Go over 145,000, you still pay.
That's quite interesting and important to if you're purchasing on scale, or there's a few years that want to do that. I wasn't aware of this until you brought it to my attention, Jim. So, yeah, that's something that I think is quite important if you're going to be doing buy-to-let purchases, and like I say, as a group or on your own in numbers.
Yeah. Okay. So deposit. Why is the deposit so important? Well, the deposit will always be 25% if you're getting a mortgage. Some lenders will maybe do up to 20% deposit, but most of them will be 25.
Yeah.
Now, the deposit here is as you tend to have a higher deposit, you'll more than likely get a lower interest rate. Okay. Now, the reason for that is purely about risk. They see that as a less of a risk, therefore they wouldn't charge as much interest on it every month, on the loan every month, because they think that's less of a risk. So that's why some people have got bad credit ratings, and other people that possibly have lower deposits pay a higher interest rate.
Yeah.
So if you've got a buy-to-let portfolio right now, this is a key indicator to you, is to look at your loan to value. So this is what we call it. This is a loan to value. So your loan to value here is 75%. Yeah. So loan to value is 75%. It's how much you've borrowed, okay, against the value of the property. So in this case, I've borrowed 75%. If I had 40 down, my loan to value would be 60%.
Yeah.
Because the other side of that is 60% I would have mortgaged. If I had 50 down, loan to value would be 50%. So as the loan to value drops, the interest rate tends to drop as well. So if you're a landlord, a seasoned landlord, and you've been in the market for quite a while, and you've not actually looked at your portfolio for quite a while, and you've never remortgaged or you've never taken any money out of it, it's actually best to look at these loan to values now, because your property might be worth a lot more than what it was when you bought it. So, classic example here is when I bought something at 100,000, 10 years passes and it's maybe worth 200,000 now. So that 25,000 is still in there, 75,000 is still the loan. But if it's worth 200,000 now, remember the 75,000 is still the loan. If it's worth 200,000 now, the 75 is now. Let me see if I can get that. It's round about 60. See that it's round about 60. It's round about 40% loan to value now.
Yeah.
You had that 80,000. So I mean, it's probably a bit more than that. 62. Yeah. Okay. So it's 38% loan to value. So when you first started out, you had a 75% loan to value. Now you've got a 38% loan to value, because in the years it's actually increased in price, but you've never actually increased the mortgage. Therefore, if you go to remortgage it, a bank will turn around and say, I tell you what, we're happy. We're actually even happy to give you cash back and actually encourage you to take a bigger mortgage. Remember what I spoke about in the beginning? They're in the business of selling mortgages. They're not in the business of helping you. They just want to help you to sell a mortgage to you. So you could actually release money and go and do something else with it. Remember, if you're releasing money from a buy-to-let mortgage, you have to reinvest it in buy-to-let property. You can't take it and go and buy a new car, or that interest no tax deductible. Okay, unless it's something for the business. You've got scale and it's a van for the business or something like that.
Yeah, I was going to say that's the point where you would obviously release and reinvest, and not treat it as people keep referring to it as tax-free cash, where you do whatever you like with. That's obviously there to be reinvested.
Okay. So that's loan to value. That's that explained. So the higher loan to value, the more interest you'll pay. The lower loan to value, the less interest you should be paying. So you'll get really good deals out there from banks and building sites that want to do a deal with you. Now, best ones are Birmingham Midshires and the Mortgage Works. Mortgage Works, I think, only go through intermediaries. Birmingham Midshires sometimes are direct, but I'm sure they're intermediaries as well. In other words, you have to have a mortgage broker to get them. So 25% loan to value. Mortgage interest rate, I spoke about that briefly, about the mortgage interest rate, but you obviously want that as best as possible. Now, this is where it comes into key indicators about capital and capital repayment and interest only. Now, we've covered this before, but I'll briefly say I'm an interest only person all the time.
Yeah.
Now, why would I say that, interest only, when a lot of people are going, well, we're always taught to pay down our mortgage. But when you're looking to invest, you want to invest as much of the money back in to actually growing the business and buying more high margin, high value properties than actually paying down a loan, which is effectively a lot less than what you'd make in a return. Classic example is if you can make a 15% net return on your investments, then why would you want to pay down a mortgage at 3% with that same money? You would want to obviously take that same money you're making, rather than paying down the mortgage, invest it in another property or invest it in more property, make 15% and actually just pay the interest every month, which is at 3%. So don't pay it down. That's why I'm a big fan of that. Plus the fact as well, you can run out of cash when you have a capital repayment mortgage to pay your tax. Now, an easy one. How can I do that? There's your rent every month, £500 a month. There's your mortgage every month, £500 a month. Okay. Now, cash flow wise, 500 minus 500 is 0. So you're making no cash. Okay. And that's the rent and that's the mortgage. But what happens here is the mortgage is actually maybe 250 interest. Okay. And 250 capital. See that?
Yeah.
What the taxman says is you've got 500 in. Okay. But you've only got £250 interest, because I'm not giving you a deduction against your capital repayment, because that's you paying down debt. We don't do that. So your 250 is now taxable. Even though you've got no cash in that scenario in a capital repayment, you've got £250 a month that you've got to pay tax on.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Okay. Any questions out there for anybody? I'll just check, make sure there's no questions. If you've got any questions, please feel free to ask, by the way. More than happy to answer them. If you're not sure about these workings, because remember, I've been at this for years and years and years. So it's it's no easy to go through all this and then think everybody else knows this. So you could be having no cash every year in that scenario, but you could end up having to pay a tax bill out of your own money. Because you're paying down debt with that money you would have paid the tax bill with. So be careful with that and work that out for yourself. That's a good key indicator to work out if you should do interest only or capital repayment in terms of your plans. A lot of people actually look on the scenario, they're wanting to pay off the debt. Maybe, I want to pay it off in the next 20 years. And that's all I want in the bank, and so to speak. But we know having money in the bank is not making you any money at all. Put it in your own business, okay? And then what to do is keep it there, because you're not making any money in the bank anyway by paying off the mortgage. So keep it there, maybe make enough money to pay, to set that off, because you're paying 3.5%, make enough money to make 3.5%. It's all neutral, but at least you've got it in your bank. That's the most important thing. And if come retirement day 30 years later, all that money's built up anyway, then just pay it off. Pay it off. Yeah. It's worth more to you probably sitting with you now than it is actually keeping paying it off. But some people have different strategies for the different things and what they want to do and how they want to do it. Okay, next indicator, arrangement fee. That's pretty obvious. I tell you what, though, arrangement fees on mortgages can vary. They're generally 0%, 0, as in you're not getting charged any arrangement fee. I had a big, I tell you what, I'll take this off the now and I'll say, I had a big back and forward with somebody on the Scottish Landlords Network, and they were talking about should I, who's got a mortgage broker, it would do it for free, or can I go to somebody for free to do it? And we're all going, get a mortgage broker, get a mortgage broker, get a mortgage broker. They're worth their weight in gold. She goes, I'm not paying £2,000 for a mortgage broker. And I'm like, God, what mortgage broker you got?
I was just going to say, you should pay £2,000.
You using Harrods? It's like, but it transpired she didn't understand the difference between a mortgage broker and an arrangement fee. Because it says, I think you're getting confused, because if you've got, if you're getting a mortgage, probably a classic example of that is, let's see if I can find it. We'll just go on there and show people the arrangement fees for the mortgage works.
Mortgage works, yeah, absolutely.
Easiest one to use, to be honest. Again, you have to go through intermediaries to get them, but it'll give you an idea about where we are in terms of products. So I'll show it in a minute. It takes a wee while to get to buy to let limited company. Select my client type. Actually, maybe I should share this.
I was going to say share and show how to go through.
Yeah, because a lot of people won't see that themselves, will they? So let's jump on and share that window. See that okay?
Yep.
So I'm on the mortgage work. So I've gone in there, accept and close, fine. And what I've gone is the product, and I've gone on product finder, and I've just gone on select by client type. I typically go for limited company, search by client type. It asks you then what type of mortgage you want. Basically, I've fixed tracker, 1 year, 2 year mortgage, 0. Just do everything, and then you can work out for yourself what that is in terms of variable, lifetime. I don't think you get lifetimes anymore. So see how you see that 1995, and then you've got 995. They're all 75% loan to value, and they've got NIM. Yep. And then what happens is, see that? See, I mean, look at this. I mean, this is so obvious. Look, 995 is an arrangement fee for 3.49%. None is an arrangement fee for 3.49%. Hello.
Yeah, see that.
And I bet you somebody's actually picked this, not realizing that they could save themselves £1,000 because it's the same interest rate. And then you've got 0.05 extra for another £2,000 difference. Now, 0.05 on a mortgage, it's like 60 grand, is nothing. And it's certainly no £2,000 over the next 2 years. So in that scenario, you would never go for the arrangement fee of 2 grand. And you wouldn't go for the arrangement fee of 995
either, no.
You would just go straight for the 0. So I think this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to force you into this to take the 3.49 fixed for 2 years. So they're making that unattractive and making that so attractive that they're wanting to get you on there. This is because this is higher than it was the year before, the months before, But now I'm getting told by the Bank of Scotland corporate division the interest rates are not going to be as high as they predicted for the year coming, for the year coming, when they predicted them back in January. And everybody was saying that interest rates were going to rise because of inflation. This is because of the Ukraine situation. And so they don't want to upset anything. Plus the fact that they don't think that the economy grow as well. Therefore, they want to keep interest rates low as a result of that, because they want to encourage people to keep spending and not put it in the bank. Hence the reason why you don't put interest rates up. Because then if people then spend it because they think I'm not getting anything in the bank, may as well spend it. That's why they do that. So when they want to take that demand out of the economy and they want to stop people spending so much and pushing inflation up, that's why they put interest rates up, in order to encourage people to save instead for the future. So that's why they do that. That's why that's in general terms. That's why they do that. So that shows you a classic example. And even look even there, 3.49 for 5 years with no fixed fee, no arrangement.
And then below it's 19985.
Aye. So what does that say about the bank? What does that say about what they're thinking over the next 5 years in terms of interest rates? If they're actually quite confident to say, I tell you what, we'll fix you for 2 years at that, but we'll even fix you for 5 years at that rate.
Yeah.
So that's actually quite a revelation. I've not seen that in a long time. So that tells me they're a bit wary about the market in terms of where we are. So that's hopefully that's a good indication about why you would look at that. Why you look at that different scenario. So that's that. Let's jump back to our spreadsheet again, and we'll just go over that again. Here we go. Okay, we're back to here. So we talked about arrangement fees. Rent is really important. Richard, why is it important to get the maximum rent?
I think it is important to get the maximum rent that you could achieve for whatever property it is in whatever area and things, because I mean the effects of increasing rental prices recently, obviously we've spoke about this, and we spoke about it in our private session as well. And the effects it has on your key performance indicators of your property and things like the yield and your occupancy rate and the type of tenant you're going to attract. And if you've got a property that's done to a higher specification in a good area with a slightly higher rental value, you're going to attract a better calibre tenant and somebody that's going to look after the property, probably stay there a wee bit more long term, which then in turn increases your occupancy rate. And these are all KPIs as well that you need to keep on track of. So it is important to get the correct rent for the correct area and the correct property. And you need to speak to somebody who knows how to do that.
Plus about repairs and improvements, you can put the money back in. You've got the money there.
Yeah, so it's important not only to get the highest rent you should be achieving, but the correct rent. So
we'd seen recently somebody was saying that they were getting 2 bedrooms, like 695 quid for a 2 bedroom.
I had this conversation with someone, and I just think
I didn't think that's realistic. I think that's crazy.
No, and it was in certain areas and things, and I think, God, these are in certain areas where maybe it should be a wee bit more lower end, where people maybe don't have the affordability. There's a lot of obviously benefit tenants and things like that as well. And they're putting prices up at this level for these kinds of properties, and they're pricing people right out of the market. And that in turn creates an issue with housing as well.
My concern as well is actually if rent controls do come in, you've mortgaged yourself up to a position where you can't actually bring your rent down. So this is why your rent is a KPI you would actually want to keep an eye on and make sure it actually fits in with your numbers. Occupancy rate, probably one of the most important things. So what is occupancy rate? That is the period the property is available, compared to the period it's actually let. So in other words, your occupancy rate, for example, could be 11 months in the year. So in other words, your property was occupied 11 months of the year. Now that means it's it's 91.67% occupancy rate. If it was occupied for 10 months of the year, it would be 83.33%. If it was occupied for 6 months of the year, guess what? It's going to be 50%. But occupancy rate, I'll show you overall how this fits in the KPIs and how important it is to you in terms of that. So occupancy rate is the number of days your property is available for rent versus the number of days it's actually filled for rent.
Occupied,
now, that doesn't take into account if you're refurbing your property, really, nobody's going to be able to live in it. So that's no part of your occupancy rate. That's part of your loss because you're basically refurbing the property. But the idea is to keep the occupancy rate high is to actually get it turned around as quick as possible, to get somebody in as quick as possible to generate income, to keep the property going. It's amazing how many people go, oh, generate income, make more money out of people. It's like, well, what do you think we're in business for? You have to generate a profit in order to keep the company going, keep everything ticking over.
Yeah, that is so important, and I think obviously what we've kind of adopted, obviously with the recent refurbs that we're doing for yourself, Jim, is obviously getting out there, and everybody else as well that's bringing on refurbs, is putting it out there before it's ready and saying, look, this is what's happening here, this is what's going to be, and lining people up before it's actually finished, and then that obviously has a knock-on effect on how good your occupancy rate is going to be, because you get somebody in there straight away.
Let's look at this. We've got a purchase price of 80 grand. We've got a 4% ADS. We've got 25% deposit. We've got 3.5, which we saw that now we're a limited company. If you're a sole trader, you get away with less than that. There is no arrangement fee on that. That's fixed for 5 years. So you've got 5 years of certainty that that's your interest rates for 5 years, which is a really great proposition now. Typically, what would we be buying for £80,000 at this point in time, Richard?
You're probably looking at about 2-bedroom flats, or possibly a 2-bedroom house in Glenrothes. Depends. So,
you might get away with that now. So, what rent level would we be looking at that?
You're talking at least £550 for a 2-bed.
But flat wise, would you be paying £550 for a flat?
Well, this is what we spoke about. We
Say
spoke about this
500?
last week. Yeah, 500. We spoke about that last week, and the difference.
But we are swings and roundabouts, aren't we? Well, I mean, if you get a house, you're 550. If you're a flat, you probably get 500. But it's got to be a decent one. It can't be just any odd one.
Yeah.
Now, this is where I talk about the next KPI, which is the most important thing: cash flow per month after the mortgage is paid. That is the most important thing after the mortgage is paid. So, in that scenario, I've got £175 a month coming in. I've got £500 rent coming in. Sorry, I've got £175 going out in interest every month, and now it's fixed for 5 years, so it's certainty there. I've got, so that's fixed for 5 years. So definitely, as long as the rent stays the same, that is the same. I'm going to clear every single month. Now, see, this is the cash flow. You want your cash flow as high as possible, because this is where you can pay for overheads. Now, here's a difference here when I talk about this one: gross yield. A lot of people, I've not heard it in a while, talking about gross yield, but I do still hear it now and again when people talk about yields.
Yeah.
So the gross yield is the total investment divided by, or the purchase price. I'll change my tongue there. It is the total rent at the top line, okay, divided by the purchase price.
Yeah.
Okay. Now that to me is I think it's out of date now. And primarily because you take stamp duty into account as well, and you take legal fees, because you're putting that in as well. You don't get a mortgage on legal fees. You don't get a mortgage on stamp duty. You don't get a mortgage, possibly on refurb, but that'll come later on. But minor refurbs, it won't at all. So I like to look at it's everything. So in other words, that true purchase price would be 80 grand. It would be plus 3.2, and then it would be plus 2,000, which is 1,000 for your legals, and maybe £1,000 for a quick turnaround and a quick spruce up, a clean, a decorate, and compliance with your smoke detectors and your EICR. So you've got 2,000, you've got 3.2, you've got 85. So the reality is, and I will actually revise this spreadsheet after this, to be honest. It will be that the gross yield now. So just let me do a quick example where the gross yield is in terms of that, because I do the other one. So we have 80,000, and we have 3.2 plus 3,200 and plus the 2,000. I should have just typed in 85,200, to be honest. 85,200. So 6,000 divided by 85,200 equals 7%. So it's now 7% instead of 7.5. But look at what happens. Look at what happens when the true measure, once you get the mortgage in place, is the gross yield with the mortgage. Now, this is probably the most important one. This is how you use the bank's money to leverage your position. So now I've taken, after the mortgage is paid, I've taken the gross profit. Okay?
Yeah.
Make sense? And I've divided that by the money I've actually got invested. Okay. Now, again, I'm going to revise that after it, because it should be the 25,200 now, because it's a lot more than that. And these numbers will change, but it shows you how you leverage your position. So that return on the money I've actually put in as my deposit, because remember, it's on the money you've got in. It's the return on the money you have in, not the return on the full thing, including the banks, because the banks are relevant. So the return is actually gone from that gross yield to the 20% gross yield in this scenario. So you've leveraged yourself by an extra 12% just by using the bank's money. How's that possible? Well, it's because you've got the bank's money at 3.5%, but you're making 20% in that scenario. So you're clearing a lot more than the usual 7.5%, hence the reason why it's up at that level now. That makes sense?
Yeah, I think that it might not make sense to everybody. So obviously, I mean, ask
Touch
questions.
base plus.
Yeah,
touch base. The important point is, if you don't get this, right, please get in touch with us. You can attend one of our master classes. It's not going to cost you anything. There is no upsell.
We're just going to say as well,
any money. Just for the avoidance of doubt here, where people go, they're just trying to make money. Yeah, we are trying to make money, because if at some point in time in the future you realize that this actually makes sense, these guys know what they're talking about, I'm going to use them to manage our property, then yeah, absolutely. You're going to use somebody else to manage your property, so you may as well use us, because we know what we're talking about. And I think that's the whole point of us demonstrating this to people publicly, so they understand that we know what we're talking about. So the overheads is another one. This is taking into account things like your management fees. So management fees are generally around about 15%, because it'll go, 15%, I can get it for 10. Aye, but it's 10 plus VAT, remember. So it's 12%, isn't it? So what I'm saying is the 15% actually includes the VAT, because to a landlord, you can't recover the VAT. So it's 15%. That's it. 12% plus VAT is 15%. So watch out for that one when people say 10 and 12. It's like, is that including or excluding the VAT? So I just say 15%. The other 15% is put aside for anything that needs to be done to the tenancy on an ongoing basis. If in the year you don't spend that other 15%, then you've maybe got insurance or something like that, then you're possibly at 20% overheads. But I like to keep it at 30. But it's another key indicator to recognise it. Monitor your overheads. That's the most important thing, and keep them round about that level, and you'll keep to that net profit. So in that scenario, the net profit is there at just over £2,000. Now, if the rent's right all the time and it's occupied all the time, the interest rate's guaranteed for 5 years. So you're always going to get an 8.3% net return. But that doesn't take into account the appreciation in the property.
Mm-hmm.
And that 8.3% is actually taken into account all the figures there. So the ones above didn't, but this one does. So see the 25,200 in here?
Yeah.
Down at the bottom? Well, that's the 2,000 plus the stamp duty plus the deposit. So all your money that's in there is divided by the net profit, giving you an 8.3% return. Capital appreciation is a natural uplift as a result of what you do. If you had this one property, for example, and you'd invested this £25,000, because remember, let's be honest, it's 25 grand to do this. It's 20 grand to get the deposit, but it's 25 grand overall to actually get this. So 25 grand, if you had invested 25 grand, you get an income out of there every single month. If you really want to create yourself an income every month of divided by 12. So you get 175 quid. And that's taxable. So that has to be taxed. Depending on your own personal taxation, that's why I can't take into account what you're doing. So 175 quid every single month for 25,200 in that scenario. And if this all pans out exactly how it should be. Could you imagine though, the most important thing is if you had actually 5 of them.
Yeah.
875 quid a month. 5 of them, and you've only put 118,000 in. So 118,000 in there, admittedly, wait now, I'll qualify that again. I need to put 10 in there to get these numbers right. So you put 126 in, and you're getting 875 quid a month before tax every single month. The other thing as well is you are not taking any capital appreciation in account. That's not taking into account any of that at all. So if you look at this and look at your capital appreciation, it's running about 4% every year.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Over a 10-year period, your capital, the price of your property is actually increased by 160,000. So 160,000 over and above, you're getting an income. Now, I'm going to say this is literally a business that pays you to wait while it goes up in value. What more could you ask for? Come on, challenge me. Tell me something that you can get more than that out there. Crypto doesn't do it.
Yeah.
Gold doesn't do it. Silver doesn't do it. None of that does it because they don't pay you to wait while the value goes up. I can guarantee you that. There's not a system like that that does this. So that's why mainstream property investment is a really good earner and a consistent basis earner. It's a Warren Buffett formula. It's almost every single month, come hell or high water, this will generate money for you as a result. It's all about volume. It's all about scalability. It's all about growing it bigger. And that's why property investment funds, if you're only going to do one, you'd probably be better investing in a property investment fund, because in this scenario, if you're investing in a fund that's maybe got 10 properties in, and you're investing, maybe you invest the initial capital, which is the 2420, you're getting 1,750 quid a month out of it, plus you've got your 240,000 still secure, and plus you're getting a 5% return on this, by the way, because that's what happens in property investment funds, and you're getting a split of the profits as well on the value of the property once it matures later on. And you'll probably not want it to mature because you'll probably want it to go up all the time. That's why property investment funds are really good. But this is the key here when I come back to saying the leverage position. So in this scenario, this is why you want to look at this. I'll say a quick hello, actually. Hi, Perry. How are you doing? Any questions?
Afternoon, Perry.
Ask. We're running out of time. This is why I'm going like a bat.
Yeah, I noticed you were speeding up there.
So we're in here. We've got that. So we've got the payback. This is important as well. So in payback scenario, and here we've got 6.3%. So your payback is basically your payback. I can do it on here. What am I doing? Payback is that, right, divided by 100, right, multiplied by, hopefully it'll just work, this will work out, is it 12? 100 is 0.1%, and it's, oh, I'm getting mixed up here. Oh, it's the time, sorry. There you go. 6.3 divided by 100 equals that, multiplied by 12 equals, you're about 15 years. You're about 15, because it goes into about 15 times. So 100, if you take 100, that's it, and you divide it by 6.3%, it goes 15.87. And the reason I say that is because if you're getting 6.3% every year, right, then you take the 100 and divide it by that. Oh, this is quite annoying. Divided by, yourself, this is getting frustrating. So say there you are in numeric terms. I've got counting there. I've got numbers. It's all right. That's because it's a percentage. But if you divide that back down, it comes down to 15.8. See the start of there. So that'll take 15.8. So if you can leverage yourself up to a position, I mean, you had said you might get 550. So see how that changes. That goes less, because then you'll be down to about 14 or maybe 12 in terms of the payback for the number of years to get. Now that's to get your initial investment back. That's 33,200 in that scenario. So after 15 years, effectively, that paid you money every single month. In an ideal world, nobody like, oh, you've got inflation, and you've got this, and you've got that. It's like,
there'll always be some factors there.
I'm saying on a spreadsheet, right? In an ideal world, if this is all equal, okay, it would take you roughly about 15 years to pay this back. But the thing is, once that's paid you back, effectively in 15 years' time, you've got no money down anymore, because you've got all that money back out in payments of income. So that money there is actually just money is in there. But in 15 years' time, if this goes up in value, then you've got possibly an opportunity to remortgage it and actually get money out to reinvest back in. So that's what I would say. And we could talk about opportunity cost and everything as well. Opportunity cost, no got time for it. We'll cover it next week. Leverage, we've talked about that. Credit control rate. Credit control rate is the number of days your property is occupied times the rent, okay? That you should be getting paid, divided by the number, the actual rent you're getting collected. So an example of that is if your property was 550. So 550, I should be getting 660. I end up collecting 6,000. All right. plus. Now, you know, it could be the fact it's delayed, so don't worry. It's like, kick the tenant out. It's like, no. You know, we've talked about this in previous shows. That is the last resort for anything.
It's not always
So the credit control rate is 91%. If everybody can see that, hopefully, 91%.
Yeah, you can see it, yeah.
Yeah, so that's the amount collected versus the amount you could have collected with the tenancy being occupied. Okay, so see the occupancy rate. So if I take the occupancy rate at 10, then see how that goes down. Because now I'm saying I got 6,000, but I was only due 5,500. So my credit control rate was 109%. What that one is? I had 125% one year. But that's another story.
But yeah, these KPIs are so important, Jim. We sat and went through these and obviously if you've got your own portfolio and you're managing things yourself, it is very much a business, and these are the things you need to be thinking about. They're so important: your occupancy rate, your credit control rate, and things. Or get an agent to do it for you because they work all that out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm not wanting to cover opportunity cost. Opportunity cost is actually a fantastic thing. You would want to know about, definitely.
We'll put it on the agenda for next week.
Yeah, we'll cover it next week because opportunity cost is really important. As an accountant, it's actually saying, okay, I've got an investment here. If I keep that investment and I don't invest in this over here, what is the cost to me of actually keeping the existing investment, or what is the benefit to me of keeping the existing investment? And that's how cost accountants work out opportunity cost. I'll tell you, in industry, it was invaluable. I was almost, I basically renamed me the profit engineer, because what I did was every single thing in industry and manufacturing that we actually did, I then used to look at it and say, okay, I could justify you getting a new piece of equipment for that, because the payback in that would end up being, you know, within 2 years quite easily, and it ran more efficiently. It saves you an absolute fortune, and that was the whole point of opportunity cost and opportunity savings.
Yeah, that'd be a good topic to go over then.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll talk about that next week. We're going to talk about our one in Kelty, and we've not got a chance. We'll have to talk about that next week as well. So that's rolled on till next week. And that's us, guys. If you've got any questions later on, you got anything else to sum up in, Richard?
No, I think, like you say, if anybody's got any questions, obviously on the rerun or whatever, message us direct. I think one of the advantages, I think, if you're watching and you're not part of a private group or an investors group, that spreadsheet, Jim will update that and send that to me, and I'm going to send that on to the members of our group.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a lot of advantages of being part of that.
It's a huge advantage. Oh my God! I mean, what about some of the team that we had in already? They just can't believe the information that they're getting now, and how they're moving on, and how they're building their portfolios, and all they've done is use us for their services. That's it.
A good success story.
And effectively, what we've told them is tens of thousands of pounds worth of information that people will charge them for as personal consultancy.
Yeah.
So it's a huge benefit to be in that mastermind group once a month, just to keep you on track and keep you on, ticking over. I actually going to finish off with this one, Richard. This was a brilliant one I heard the other day. If you're chained up at the bottom of the sea in a safe, you're not going to call Paul Daniels to get you out, are you? You're going to call Harry Houdini. And I think that's the most important point. If you want to learn about property investment, you wouldn't be calling the person that just started 3 or 4 years ago, maybe even the person that started maybe 10 years ago. You'd probably be looking for the person that's still active in that sector for the last 30 years and is still making an absolute fortune out of property investment. And that's it. And for this week, it's goodbye from him.
And goodbye from him.
I see. I got you on that.
Bye.